Welcome to the What's Your Deal podcast, where we discuss business acquisitions, investments, management, and exit strategies. I'm your host, Matt Euler. Let's dive in. Well, welcome to another episode of What's Your Deal. I'm joined today with a close friend of mine, and I'll call him a colleague as well, Steve Williams. So let me give you a little bit of background on Steve, and then we'll dive into his current project, which is Family Bank, and also an amazing history of business ownership and corporate relations that have really inspiring, I think, for our audience and certainly for me. So Steve is the CEO of Aspire Family Bank, where he helps families build generational wealth and lasting legacies through a modern approach to a century-old framework. He's a graduate of Ohio State University, and he spent 25 years in the tech industry with Fortune 50 companies and startups, playing a key role in Zayo Group's growth from a $225 million startup to a $5 billion IPO, and then a $10 billion global company. After leaving corporate life, he and his wife, Julie, founded 3 Square Development, which is a boutique luxury real estate firm in Denver, and it's now in its 10th year of business. Steve, welcome.
Thanks, Matt. Good to be here.
It's so great to have you. And as I introduce you, part of what always fascinates me, because I have no background in corporate America, is the roles you played, and some of the numbers that you're talking about are just mind-boggling. And so one of the things I'd like to do is just kind of understand the differences between life for you in a corporate environment like that with those kinds of objectives and what you're up to now. And then I'd love to dive into Family Bank just to get a high-level understanding for me and our audience about what is Family Bank. It's a very common word I hear these days. But yeah, with that, if you can share with us your background, that'd be great.
Yeah, so the corporate world, I think the starting out there was really great for my career in terms of learning and structures and being able to navigate organizationally. So I did learn a lot in the large corporate environment. However, it's a terrible place for creativity and personal accountability. So I knew once I got into that world, and this has been some time ago, so it was a fairly common thing to go and start working for a big company. That was everybody's goal, was to go work for a big company. It wasn't necessarily to go and be an entrepreneur. So with that background, I kind of jumped into startups, smaller companies as fast as I could. So I got out, I spent probably the first 10 years of my career in larger companies, and as quickly as I could, I got with sort of smaller, more nimble companies. And what's interesting about that is it's a really wonderful environment to test your own grit and your fortitude, right? Because you have a lot more responsibility, you wear a lot more hats. Things are not as certain as they were when you were in a corporate environment where you had a very specific thing that you did. Tens of thousands of other employees probably had the same type of a silo that they were in. And then you sort of graduate from that to really doing your own thing. So you mentioned my wife Julie and I started after we exited Zayo Group, which was an IPO that we did in 2014, $5 billion IPO. We decided we were going to get into real estate development. And neither one of us knew anything about real estate or development.
Wow.
At all.
That's amazing.
Had no background in it. Yeah. We just knew we wanted to do it. We knew it was a path that we'd done enough research and been involved in larger sort of multifamily projects as a limited partner, things like that. But we dove into it and we learned it. And we started out doing flips. We did a handful of those, and then we graduated to ground up development quicker than we thought. We had an opportunity that came our way, and we not only did one, but we did 2 at the same time. So when we go big, I guess.
That's great. And so I'm going to dive into the corporate world first and then talk more about your company. And I'm always intrigued at the level I deal with Main Street businesses mostly. And so husband and wife dynamics in business, I think, is fascinating. And I also think it serves our audience really well because it oftentimes is a factor. But in the corporate world, did you start out at the bottom and move your way up? Did you start out in a position that you finished in? I mean, what is that like? And it's so hard for me to get my arms around hundreds of employees or thousands in one environment, and who's keeping track of who and how you excel as an
Yeah.
individual in that environment.
Yeah, it's an interesting story. I I went to work for Sprint right after college. I was recruited by Sprint, and I moved from Columbus, going to Ohio State, and then moved down to Nashville. And I was a sales rep. I was a lowly sales rep. My salary was, I think, $18,000, maybe 16,000, something like that, and everything else was commission based. And so the one thing I knew is sales back then was the way to go. I wanted to be in sales because I wanted to make a lot of money.
Okay.
And based on my background and how I grew up, that was not surprising that I'd want to have some means. But what I figured out very quickly is I didn't want to be in sales. I wanted to be in sales leadership.
Oh, interesting.
Yeah, so I did the best I could. I really wasn't great at sales, but I knew I would be great at leading and managing teams. And so I only spent 2 years in sales, and then I was promoted to a district sales manager at 26, which at the time was the youngest in the history of the company.
Wow.
So here I was, the 26-year-old managing people that were some in their 40s, some in their 50s. So it was, it took a lot of, again, grit and fortitude, because that's a difficult position to be in. You lack credibility and everyone's questioning your leadership. So, but things went well. I did well at that, and then continued to move up through that organization. And I left Sprint and then went to a startup that built fiber networks. So this was my first startup. Was only 6 years into my career, and did well there. And one thing led to another. Then I wound up at AT&T as a vice president. Again, pretty young. I was 36, and I had, I kind of had imposter syndrome, because I was 36 and had this huge office and this big mahogany conference table and staff and a CFO and all these things. And back to the corporate world, that was kind of a shock for me, and it was very difficult position for me. So needless to say, I wanted to get out of that as quick as I could, because it wasn't something that I felt comfortable in, and everybody was just looking to retire. So that was a
Interesting.
tough environment.
So what's interesting about what you're saying to me is that, in small businesses, we face adversity every day. And what I'm imagining is the adversity you faced as a young sales manager with people that had been in the industry for probably quite a bit longer than you had.
Oh yeah.
Were you able to overcome those issues, or was and I'm assuming, ego and all these power struggles? I mean, was that just the daily until you moved out of that position, or how did you get to the other side of that?
Yeah, I had a lot of help. We'll talk about that later. But I had a lot of help. I had good leaders
Okay.
around me, good bosses that helped me develop. I developed more in that role, I would say, than any role even in the future, because it was so drastic. I had to do difficult things. I had to, manage people's performance, and when they weren't performing, I had to put them on a performance plan. I had to terminate people. I had never done that before. Very difficult. And some of these people were my peers formerly. But some of them, a couple of them were trying to undermine me and things like that. And so things like that happen. It's I learned in that job, the most important thing I learned was being able to handle, even though I still don't like it to this day, but being able to handle difficult conversations and do things that most people will avoid doing. Even though
Mm,
I don't like to do it, I learned that I do it even in the face of that.
that's powerful. Yeah,
Yeah, it served me very well in my career.
no, I can see that for sure. And it's funny, it's a very similar conversation that I've had with my kids, which is that the better you can get at doing things you don't want to do, the easier life will be. And
Yep.
it sounds that's very similar to what you took from that position.
I,
Um,
I do the same with my boys.
do you?
I have 18-year-old and 16-year-old boys, and I always say to them, do hard things.
Hmm.
Do hard things. And It's a great lesson for all of us.
Man, it really is. I've had especially my 19-year-old thank me for that, for not making it so easy that he didn't have to do some hard things along the way, because we build muscles doing that. And
Yep.
I love
Yep.
it. That's great. So one
Mine
more.
did, mine did the same thing. We'll have to talk about that sometime.
Yeah.
My 18-year-old did the same thing after we made him get a job to get his car. He
Uh-huh.
didn't want to get a job, and we made him get a job and said, "You're going to have to pay for your car." And he literally thanked me just a few months ago before he took off to college.
That's so great, isn't it?
It's very rewarding.
Yeah. And I know for me, some of the times I've made my kids or allowed them to do some hard things, I've questioned it in my mind because I didn't need them to do the hard things, right? But it's,
Same.
yeah, that's
Same thing. We
great.
could have bought them the car. A lot of their friends,
Hmm.
when they turned 16, they walked outside, there was a new car, but we just weren't willing to do that. And I don't blame anyone that does. We did that. We did it with phones and things like that. So we certainly made our mistakes, but that was one that we sort of stood firm on. And it was the biggest, the biggest issue we had in his entire teenage years.
Wow.
Yeah. I mean, we had real conflict over it, and it wound up being a good thing. And because we
Yeah.
stuck to it,
That's great.
which was not easy.
Uh-huh.
It's really, as it's not easy. But he did thank us. He said, "I'm glad," because it taught him some things, and he was actually proud of it. That's the thing. He was proud of it because that was um, his fulfilling of his own desire, and fulfilling his own need, and he gained a lot of confidence. He told me from that.
Oh, it's amazing. And it's funny how these conversations go, but that piece is another thing that I've just become aware of lately. And it astounds me what I don't know at times, despite how much I try to know is everything it's
Yeah.
important. And one of the things that I just learned is that oftentimes if I do something for somebody, let's say our kids, because that's the topic we have right now, if I do something for them that they could do on their own, I'm robbing them of the opportunity to feel the level of success that I have been able to feel at times because of the difficult things I've done. And
Yep.
what a switch of mindset, as opposed to a gift and I'm making it easy. I'm actually hurting them in some
Yep.
cases. So there's a fine line there.
You're segueing right into Family Bank, because
Perfect.
that's one of the key, and we can get to it eventually, but we should probably bookmark that, because I do want to talk a little bit about that when we get to Family Bank. I think
Yeah.
to me, that's one of the absolute most important aspects of creating a family bank.
Well, that's great. Let's go down that road, because we can come back and circle back to any other topics that are of interest. But this is one that's dear to my heart, and so important, I think, with this generation of youth learning how to stand tall based on what they've been able to accomplish. So yeah, so please, and maybe a high level of Family Bank would be great, and then dive into how this serves.
Yeah, family bank is it's a concept that's been around for over 100 years, and it was really pioneered by the Rockefellers, by John D. Rockefeller, when the government broke up Standard Oil back around the turn of the century. Rockefeller wound up with lots of cash. He had all these companies that he had to sell off. Right, it was broken into 36 different companies, to tell you how big it was.
Wow.
He had his fortune was worth more than the U.S. Treasury at the time. And so when this happened, he decided that he needed to figure out a way to be able to keep this and be able to use it for good in the future, and not squander it like you saw with families like the Vanderbilts, who had equal wealth and wound up squandering it. It was all gone. The Vanderbilts had no structure in place. And in fact, an interesting story on that, the Vanderbilts had a family reunion in the 1980s at Vanderbilt University. And I think there were 70 members there, something along those lines. And not a single one of them was even a millionaire.
Wow.
Yeah,
That's
and a
that's
million was a lot
mind-boggling.
more. It's mind-boggling. It is. That kind of fortune. They literally had more money than the U.S. Treasury, and it was all gone within, a handful of generations. So in contrast to that, the Rockefellers, what John D. Rockefeller did was he hired some of the best financial minds in the world, and they went away for 2 years to come up with a plan. And one aspect of the plan that they came back, well, really what they came back with is something most people have heard of, which is called a family office.
Mm-hmm.
So they were really the pioneers of the family office concept. But one part of the family office was what we now refer to as the family bank. And the family bank is a way that you create a structure. It's actually fairly simple. You create a family constitution, which the Rockefellers still live by today. All the future generations have followed this constitution. You create a trust, right? So you have either revocable or irrevocable trust, which is very simple to do. And then you have, as part of the family constitution, you have governance. So it's all the rules that everyone abides by. If you want to borrow money from the bank, that type of thing. But the key to the family bank and the real engine of the family bank are whole life insurance policies. And because they're the only financial tool available that have a specific purpose that is that really makes the whole family bank system work. And we can get into that, but the
Okay.
way at a high level, when you take out these policies and you create the family bank, people can borrow from the family bank. So all of Rockefeller's children, grandchildren, great grandchildren, they're able to go to the bank and borrow from it. But what allows them to borrow from it is that they have policies on themselves. So the bank, the family bank, buys a policy on every child, so that if that child doesn't pay back that loan, then the bank automatically gets paid back when that child passes away. So it's
Wow.
self-perpetuating, and it can never, if you build it right, it can never go bankrupt. So that's when we talk about building a legacy. That's what makes family banks so extraordinary and different than anything out there, because it can't fail if you put the right structure in place.
Okay, so that's just mind-boggling, and it brings up all kinds of questions for me. So, and I know we don't want to go too deep into the weeds on this if it reaches a level that it's too deep into the weeds, but so whole life policy, a lot of what I grew up learning is that, buy term and invest the rest, right? And all of that stuff. But obviously in this situation, it does serve a purpose. And I've heard this at times, but can you describe why whole life?
Yeah, whole life has several unique mechanisms, and one of the most unique is that you can take out a policy on somebody else's life and name the beneficiary anyone that you want.
Huh.
So in this case, the Rockefeller Family Bank, every time a child is born, whether that's wherever they are in the lineage, grandchild, whatever, doesn't matter, automatically a life insurance policy is opened up on that newborn child.
Okay.
And that basically, by having that insurance policy, and that policy is paid by the bank, it's owned by the bank, and the bank is the beneficiary. The only thing that the bank doesn't have is the insured person. The insured person is the family member,
Interesting.
is the child. So what happens is, as that child gets older and that child says, "Hey, I want to buy my first home. I want to start a business," these kinds of things. Whatever you decide you want it to be, that they're allowed to borrow from the bank for. The bank will then, the trustees, and if you have a board or however you want to set it up, will take an application just like you do at a bank, and they will either approve or deny that. Most likely they're going to approve it. There's really no reason to deny it because that's what it's built for. And if that person who borrows from the bank doesn't pay it back, and they won't be able to borrow anymore, number one.
Mm-hmm.
And number two, when they pass away, because the bank owns the policy on them, all of that death benefit goes back in to replenish the bank.
That's
So
amazing.
that's why it's whole life. Whole life is the only financial instrument where you can do this.
And is the death benefit the same for every family member, or do they change that based on who's who? Because that determines the borrowing power for the for the child in this case, or the family member.
Yeah, it's really any way that you want to set it up. But our co-founder Eddie Wilson, he's a third generation because his great grandfather set up Family Bank, and the way they do it for them is they open up a $12,000 a year policy on every child, and then that grows over time. So basically, you by the time that child becomes borrowing age, an adult, then the premiums that they paid into it, there's going to be a cash value with it, and they can borrow from that. But his is third generation, so I think he said, I believe he told me that only 12 people had actually passed away
Mm.
in his family bank. However, it's got significant value because what you also do in the family bank is you invest with the cash in the family bank,
Okay.
like any kind of institution would do. So it actually runs it. It sort of stands on its own as its own entity, and it has investments. It makes loans to its heirs, its beneficiaries, and it exists for the sole purpose of perpetuating that generational security and generational wealth for the Wilson family, just like the
Wow.
Rockefellers does today. Now, what it also does, like the Rockefellers, is once you build a good sized family bank, it gives you the ability to also make incredible impact across the world in the case of the Rockefellers, right? And actually in the case of Eddie Wilson as well, as you know, through Impact Others. Now that's him on his own. That has nothing to do with his family bank. But the point is, he, that's in his blood,
Hmm.
and because he grew up in that environment, he wants to give back,
Hmm.
and so that's why he created Impact Others, which feeds thousands of children across the world, and provides housing, orphanages, you name it.
Yeah, so it sounds like, I mean, it's a financial vehicle, but it also helps to create this culture like we started out talking about, which is why you said it leads into it, where there's a responsibility in it and a dynamic that raises that family with the generational wealth that could destroy the family or continue that same legacy. Yeah, that's an amazing program.
I'll tell you what. So just a quick story on that. When I was at the Aspire event about a year ago, when I was just a member, I was a brand new member, and I heard Andrew Cordell, our other co-founder of Aspire, talking about the family constitution and family governance. And I literally, at that moment, sitting in the audience, I had an epiphany, because what would happen, what Julie and I had gone through, is that we had a trust and we had life insurance, but we had no family bank. We'd never even heard of a family bank, didn't know what it was. So what was going to happen was, when our boys were young at the time, they were, I don't know, between probably 7 and 10, 12 years old, over this period of years,
Hmm.
our boys would have, because we didn't have any of the governance and any of the rules, they would have, when they turned 18, if something would have happened to us, Julie and I would talk about this when we were getting ready to get on a flight, we would take what we call mom and dad trips, right? Getaway trip, work on always to make sure you work on your marriage, right? And
Hmm.
make sure that's solid. And so we did a good job of that for many, many years. And so we'd be going on that trip, and we would say, if something happens to us and this plane goes down, every parent goes through this. This plane goes down, the boys, when they turn 18, they're just going to get this huge pot of money. It's going to be insurance money, and it'll be all of our assets. We have no governance in place. We have no rules in place about what would happen. So we would frantically start texting, writing notes, and sending them to the executor and say, "Hey, if something happens on this while we're on this plane, um, you know, give the boys like 10% at 18. Give them like 20% when we just make stuff up, 20% when they're 30, and give them the balance of it when they're 35." And we would just make stuff up. And it was awful, because we had this pit in our stomach every time. And so when I heard about the family constitution and family governance from Andrew, it just hit me, like, it really just hit me square in the face. I was like, this is exactly what we needed.
Mm.
And then we really would have had, tying these things together, we would have had our family bank, because we had the trust. So if we would have made the policy, the life insurance policies, each of us had a policy. We made the trust the beneficiary of the policies, and then we put a family constitution and governance in place to say this is what happens. Then all that takes care of itself, right? It's all done. That's all we had to do, and we didn't do it because we didn't know about it. So the thing I wanted to say, though, the thing that struck me the most about it is, if the biggest disservice any of us can do to our children, in my opinion, is to hand them an incredible amount of cash, which comes with it an incredible amount of responsibility, because they can either lose it, it can get taken from them. Lots of bad things can happen. And even though those are bad things, the very worst thing in my mind that could happen is that your children have a lack of purpose because you've handed them this huge, windfall, and they never get to experience their own fulfillment and their own achievement of their own goals and dreams, because you robbed them of that by handing them everything. What is there to strive for? This is the trust fund effect, and that's what Family Bank absolutely takes care of. And that's why I think it's the most important part of a family bank, is that aspect.
Well, that's amazing, and it's also, I can feel the passion in what you're doing, and it's you're an amazing leader of this plan as a result, and especially having lived it. So let me ask you a question, again, technical. So my wife and Audrey and I have we have a trust, and I've been a trustee, unfortunately, for some friends that have passed, and been through this process of trying to manage their money for their kids. And we've designed our trust in a way that we think is as effective as we can make it be, with similar to what you described, where, they get money for education and housing for a period of time, and then they get a small amount of money, and then they get, 5 years later, they get another amount, and so on and so forth. So I can't say that gives us enormous peace, frankly, but it's a whole lot better than them getting a bucket full of money when they're grieving, hopefully, over the passing of their, yeah. So how does the family bank, I think I understand the difference, but I'd love to hear it. How is the family bank different than somebody who's tried to set up their estate plan as effectively as could be simply through a trust?
Yeah, a couple things. So, you basically have all the tools, you have all the elements to create your family bank. You have the trust, you have the policy. Those are the hardest part. The family constitution and the governance are really what sort of drives the decision making, and it creates all the rules that we're talking about. And by the way, those rules can be, hey, I want them, at our passing, I want them to receive X amount of cash, right? Or in Eddie's case, what they did is, when a child turned 18, and it still happens to this day, no one has to die because it's third generation.
Yeah.
Child turns 18, they wind up, well, I think it's maybe when they turn 25, after college, from the age of 25 to 35, they get $5,000 a month for 10 years to get them started. But outside of that $5,000 a month for those 10 years, anything that they want, and they want to use the family bank, they have to take a loan.
Okay.
That's the key. The key is the loan piece. So when you talk about what you could do, this is the part that I believe, helps avoid silver spoon syndrome, right? I like to say that instead of a silver spoon in their mouth, we're really putting a silver hammer in their hand, because they still have to work, but they have a leg up, because they have a place that they can go and get capital to do that work. And so that's really what most family banks do, is you set it up as a loan structure. So what happens is, for instance, there are a lot of cases, and we talk to people every day that do this, and some people will say, you can pay for your own college. You can borrow from the bank, and then you pay back. We'll give you a 50-year payback on it. Either very, very low interest or zero interest. You don't have to start even paying it until 5 years after you graduated. They'll put other things tied to it based on your grades and how you performed and that type of thing. but the idea is not to create a burden for them like you would see with student loans and student debt. But the idea is for them to have their own accountability to say, you know what? I paid for my own college.
Hmm.
I did that. No one paid for me. And when you have skin in the game, it means something different to you when you go to college.
Absolutely. And so is there a mechanism in place? I know looking at my own children that, one of them's a phenomenal saver, another one's a phenomenal spender, and, I mean, they different aspects. So I can imagine a young person thinking, it's my money anyway, I don't have to pay it back. I'm assuming that just happens. And then there are systems in place to prevent that from being a huge problem along the way.
Yeah, and the main thing is, you hope that part of it happens because you create a family constitution that talks about your vision, your values, your shared beliefs. And so they respect and honor the family bank, because the family bank is not just for them, it's for future generations. It's for their children and their children's children. So if they're not paying back the family bank, they, it would be clear to them that they're robbing from future generations. The other thing is, if I mentioned this before, but I want to make sure that this point is real clear on it, because this is the critical piece. This is why if you want to borrow from the family bank, the family bank has to have a policy on your life.
Mm-hmm.
And that the family bank owns, you don't own it. You don't have any right to any of the cash value, anything. The family bank, the life insurance, the irrevocable life insurance trust, or whatever trust you set up, has the ownership of it. So if you don't pay it back, first of all, you don't get to take any more loans. And secondly, when you pass away, the bank's going to take those funds anyway, but
Yeah.
the bank will get replenished when that happens. And that might be 50 years down the road, but it still replenishes the bank.
Wow. Well, the other, and we could talk about this for days, it sounds like, but the other part that I love about that is that it's not the way you just described it. It's not a me thing. It is a family generational wealth plan where a family member gets to participate in the overall plan for the betterment of the family for generations to come. I mean, who wouldn't want to play by those rules and contribute just like generations before had to start this? I mean, it's really powerful.
Yeah, it is. And I think that after talking to in fact, Andrew and I were in with a private client today talking about this, and it's amazing to see when they understand this concept, to see the calm just come over them, because they don't know about it, and they don't know it exists, and they don't know they can do this. Because most of us, and I'm sure you and I are the same, but we worry about our finances in large part due to what we want to leave behind for the people that we love.
Mm-hmm.
And by putting the family bank in place, you don't have to worry about that anymore. And when people start to understand that, they sit in our meetings. The couple we were with today, she started crying because it was so powerful. It's like, wow, all that worry and everything, because you set this and you forget it. You don't have to once you get your family bank set up, you're paying your premiums, for your policies. But outside of that, as long as you continue to do that, your bank is self-perpetuating from then on. And so that's really the coolest thing about it for me, is I get to see people come to the realization of what this can be. And then, by the way, the other thing that they realize at that same time, and what we talk to them about, is wouldn't this be a better way to sort of set that up where it's fail-proof, but also it allows you then to focus on the now and the here, and with the assets that you have and the wealth that you have, or maybe you don't have much wealth, but whatever means you have, it allows you to focus on now, and then you get to go spend funds doing things with your kids and your family, your loved ones, to create experiences, rather than saying, no, we have to save. I mean, it seems like, a lot of people we meet with, they're saving and they're trying to build, and they're building for when they die. And the thing is, the kids, the people you leave behind would rather spend that time with you and have experiences while you're alive and not have all of that
Yeah.
when you die. But this allows you to do both.
It's amazing, really amazing. And part of what I appreciate about it as we're talking about it, I don't know your background or family much, but the sense I get, similar to mine, is that what I've been able to accumulate, not that my family didn't help me and support me, but my family was not wealthy in any way. And I want to be able to help my kids to accumulate their own wealth, but it doesn't mean that I don't want to support them and come alongside them. It's a term we use with our kids all the time. We want to come alongside to help you. We don't want to give it to you because that would be the worst thing we could do. And so it sounds like that the family bank dynamic for a family that it certainly has the means to have a generation that grew up not having to create their own wealth, it is a way to come alongside and support without robbing them from the experience, but support to keep that culture going. Yeah.
I grew up in multiple generations of poverty. My great-grandparents lived in poverty. My grandparents lived in poverty. My mom and I lived in poverty. We were on, all kinds of social welfare programs, food stamps. We lived in trailer parks, the whole thing. Mm-hmm. And what's interesting is I was the first one in our family to go to college, and I did it all on student loans and grants, government grants, for low-income families. And what's interesting is for the longest time, and really until I got involved with Family Bank and with Aspire, I was, in my mindset, I had sort of broken the cycle. Mm-hmm. But I really haven't broken the cycle. I hadn't broken the cycle because I didn't have a family bank in place. Because just because I broke the cycle doesn't mean that my children won't squander everything. Mm-hmm. You go look at the Vanderbilts. That's the story we use over and over. And that story exists you don't have to be Vanderbilt wealthy for that story to exist. And it exists over and over and over, where you think that you've broken the cycle, but the cycle just reoccurs down your lineage. Mm-hmm. By putting a family bank in place, you can truly break the cycle, because it's about the survival of the family bank. The family bank has to always win, and it does. That's how it's set up. As long as the family bank wins, your family wins.
Wow. Well, let me ask you another question, and our time is running short, unfortunately, but this has been so powerful for me because I've heard family bank much more common lately, but I truly had no understanding at all of what made it work. So, number one, is there a certain level of net worth or accumulated wealth that somebody should have or is recommended to have before they pursue this vehicle of generational wealth?
Not really. What I tend to say, because of my background, we use the term generational wealth, but really for me, what I would term it is, you first are trying to achieve generational security.
Generational
right?
security.
So my mom filed bankruptcy when I was 12 years old over $2,800.
Wow.
$2,800, and it haunted her for the rest of her life. And that's the kind of thing that I think you have to start with. I think no matter where you are, you can begin to set up a family bank for sure. Now, if you're, deep into debt and those kinds of things, of course, there's a needs hierarchy that needs to be, you need to get, some positive cash flow coming in. But I would encourage everyone to take a look at starting small. You start small. Maybe the policies you get are, maybe it's a $20,000 policy, $50,000 policy, death benefit, whatever, but it's something that's there that you can build on as things do improve and as you get your financial life moving in the right direction. You can do that. So I would say that the general answer is no, there's no real limitation, but certainly it helps if you've got a little bit of disposable income that you can put into it to get it started. But the very main thing is getting it started.
Okay.
Get your constitution in place, your trust in place. You can get a trust in place for a revocable trust for a few $100s, and then you have your policy.
Okay. Well, that's great. And we've referred to Aspire a couple of times, and Aspire, the company that I'm connected with from a standpoint of trying to provide business education and training, it's Aspire Tour Company. And
Yep.
you being the CEO of Aspire Family Bank is affiliated or connected with Aspire, the tour company. And so if somebody wants to learn more about this, they can contact you and work through Aspire Family Bank, or how does this
Yeah.
work if somebody wants to connect?
Yeah, I mean, I'm happy to have them just reach out to me. Maybe you guys can
Yeah,
put my email in the comments,
we'll do it. Yep,
and they can just reach out to me directly, and I'm happy to talk with them and get them in touch with one of my strategists, and we can help them with the family constitution side and all that. We're working on some really exciting things there as well in terms of an actual website where you can literally build it, and it's based on the TruePath methodology, which is another term your viewers may not have heard of, but it's an incredible methodology for self-improvement and all kinds of good things. But it's developed by Larry Yatch, who's a former Navy SEAL and someone that's one of our main businesses at Aspire.
Yeah, well, it's funny you share. I referred to Larry actually last night on a webinar that I hosted, and then today during another podcast with another guest. That my time that I spent with Larry has been so impactful for me, and this is part of why I'm honored to be connected with Aspire, and I believe you would say the same. Is
Absolutely.
some of the things that they're bringing to people to help improve the quality of their life, their wealth, their abundance, generational wealth. I mean, all of these things is really what is at the heart of what Aspire is about. And it's an honor for me to be connected. And yes, Sarah, who works with me, and we actually have a slide of Larry, and one in his fatigues because he's a former Navy SEAL, and so much of his life and how he's contributed to other lives came from his time in service. And the gentleman now who is just an amazing man and an honor.
Yeah, he's amazing guy. Count him as a very good friend, and I owe a lot to Larry.
Yeah, that's great.
And so I was honored, by the way, for him to help us create the family constitution using his methodology. That's what makes it different. It's fantastic. So anyway, more to come on that, but that's something we're in development on right now, so that some of the things that Larry teaches and some of the ways that he gets to, the real core of the answers for people can actually be found in our family constitution builder.
It's amazing. Yeah. Well, I can't wait to hear more. And certainly Audrey and I need to connect with you to get our affairs in order in a way that does give that level of peace. Because I can tell you, even though we've done it the way we were coached to do it up to this point, I've lived it through a good friend of mine who passed. And it's not exactly what he intended. And so I'm excited to learn more about it, and grateful to have you on as a guest. And we didn't get to cover 3 Square Development and so many of the other things that we wanted. So I might reach out and see if you're willing to join us again. But this,
for sure.
Yeah, this conversation has been really amazing and eye-opening, and hopefully is equally eye-opening to a lot of people in our audience that want the same things that you and I and so many others are trying to do with their wealth. Once, I found personally there becomes a place in my life where it's like, I have what I need. I don't need more. And what's next? And especially as I'm watching people around me pass, and, my mother passed not too long ago, it really starts to hit home with, okay, what is this going to look like? And how do I want to contribute to the people I love and care about that are closest to me in a way that is a gift to them long-term, as opposed to a curse or robbing them of something that would help them to feel the same way or the same level of achievement in life. So, yeah.
We could definitely spend a whole session talking about that.
I bet we could.
For sure.
That we could. Well, again, I'll look forward to our next episode, but I want to thank you again for not only giving us the knowledge about Family Bank, but also just sharing the heart that you bring to it that makes it so important to you and such a purpose in your life. It really is very different to hear it from you in that way than if it was just information conveyed out and here's what it is. It means a lot. So thank you.
Thank you. Thanks for having me. This has been great. I look forward to doing it again, Matt.
That sounds great. We will do it. Well, I hope you enjoyed that episode of What's Your Deal? Again, a whole nother twist from some of the topics we talk about, but one that, again, moves me at a place of my heart because in life, again, there's business and accomplishments and achievements, but there's this level of connection with people that what I found is without that, the rest of it really doesn't mean a whole lot. So I hope you've enjoyed it, and we will see you on the next episode. And that's a wrap on today's episode. We hope you enjoyed the conversation and got some valuable insights into the world of buying and selling businesses. Want to be a guest on our show? If you have a deal that you'd like to discuss with us or a business story to share, we'd love to hear from you. Shoot us an email using the contact information below in the episode notes, and let's make this happen. Never miss an episode. Make sure you subscribe on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, or wherever you listen. And if you found today's episode helpful, please leave us a review. It helps more people like you find the show.